Jim.
Well, I could teach you a few things on how to. I'm in the corner. I'll be there in 2 minutes. I think the crowd would appreciate us knowing what it's
He was serious.
I have a book. Now that I know what's
Yes, see, he doesn't like it. Where is... Hey, Jacqueline, let me see. Where are you going to be?
Remarks.
All right, you're welcome. And where do we come in?
Later.
Okay.
Oh, you're at with Mr. Bonifay?
Yeah.
You're after taps, after bugler.
That's fine. I'll just set the stage
Yeah.
for you.
And Brian says, no, you outrank me. And I said, Brian, it's not about me.
Jim.
Well, yeah. And so he's being transferred.
I know.
He's leaving tomorrow night.
I
So
know.
I said, you will be doing this. And he goes, yes, ma'am.
And I feel terrible because the last couple of times he's invited me to meetings here. I've like either gotten the message a little late or last time I was sick, and so it's like. And then he's like, well, "This is my last one," and I didn't get the email till like 3 days later, and I was like,
I'm already working on his replacement, Kim Rapolsky. She's a Poland. She comes every year.
"Oh yeah, that makes sense. Kind of fun."
She, for the 75th, went to the governor and had certificates made up for all my programs. And then she wouldn't take any money. So I sent her a check. And 3 months later, I'm like, damn it, would you cash my check? You're screwing up my banking. And then finally, she says, Kathleen, I didn't want any money. And I said, you took your time, your gas, to go over to the governor's office to get it done. And I said, that's, you were able to do, because you live here, what I couldn't. So, see, I have 4 states under me. I've got California, Hawaii, Nevada, and Alaska. And so it's my obligation as first district director to find, I picked Brian. So now,
Fill some shoes.
yeah, and it's not going to be easy. So,
Well, I will go ahead and share those remarks without alluding to what's to come, and that will set you up.
perfect, yeah. Yeah.
'Cause I don't have
But who's
scripted
counting,
remarks.
right,
I'm just-
Jim? Who's counting? You sure this is the Navy, huh? And did I see you were a southpaw?
I am a southpaw,
That's
yes,
a
ma'am.
sign of intelligence.
Good afternoon. Would the guests please be seated? We're going to start here in about 2 minutes. Thank you. I was pushed up there. Kept up the broad shoulders.
Big man.
I went to the inauguration of the ball club.
I just got my.
Does that happen?
So I'm not sitting there 4 hours.
Yeah.
I'm going to go find another team. Best thing I did.
You were both working.
Oh, yeah. Plus, you know, all the flag and winter all the way to flag, so I figured I'm moving. I don't have a watch, and I don't have a cell phone with me. Well, as a friendly reminder, please place your cell phones in man mode, please. Thank you. Good afternoon. On behalf of the National Park Service, Commander Navy Region Hawaii, and our special guest, Mr. Gil Meyer, I would like to welcome you to the USS Utah Remembrance Ceremony. I am Master Chief Greg Bedari, the Command Master Chief of Commander Navy Region Hawaii. Thank you for joining us for this very special ceremony where we honor the crew of the USS Utah. To begin, we would like to say aloha to the USS Utah survivor, Mr. Gil Meyer, who joins us again this year. Sir, it is truly an honor to have you here again with us. I would also like to recognize our other Pearl Harbor survivors in attendance today. Thank you all for being here, and more importantly, thank you for your service. A warm aloha also to Mrs. Mary Craig and her daughter Nina. For years, Mrs. Craig has been attending this ceremony on behalf of her twin sister Nancy, who remains were with their father when the ship went down. Captain Bernard, Commander Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam, thank you, Captain, for joining us. We are here today to honor the crew of the proud ship that you see behind me. the USS Utah. The USS Utah was commissioned on August 31st, 1911. She served with honor in the Atlantic during the First World War as the flagship of Battleship Division I, as well as wartime readiness and peacetime missions on both sides of the Atlantic and off South America. In 1931, she was converted to a target vessel where she helped train Navy pilots as realistic target for exercises involving carrier-based planes. On the morning of December 7th, 1941, she took multiple torpedo hits that caused her to capsize in much the same position as you see her here today. This afternoon, we remember the 58 crew members who died on this proud ship. It is now my pleasure to introduce Ms. Jacqueline Ashwell, the Superintendent of the World War II Valor in the Pacific National Museum. Ms. Ashwell moved to Oahu in October of 2015 from Seattle, where she had served as the Superintendent of the Seattle National Area Park Services. She is passionate about historic preservation, community and employee engagement, and developing the next generation of stewards who care for our nation's most sacred places, such as our National Pearl Harbor Memorial. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Jacqueline Ashwell.
I always have to lower that. Good evening, everyone. Aloha. I'm on day 2 for me, really. The commemoration kind of started yesterday. And it is such an honor to be the one that welcomes you. And I'm feeling so much just emotion. It's like a homecoming. It's a family reunion. So it's good to see Kathleen and Brian, not Nancy, Mary and Nina, Gil, Jim. I haven't seen Jim in a while. In fact, I want to tell a little story on Jim, because he loves it when I tell stories about him. So for those of you who were here last year, does anybody remember what we agreed to do? I said that the Park Service would take down the flag that had flown over the Utah Memorial on December 6th and 7th of 2017, and to honor Jim for everything he's done over the years. He was just telling me that he's been doing interments here going back 24 years. 24 years. And we wanted to give him that flag to thank him for all of his service. And I was talking to Kathleen a second ago, and I said, you know how long it took me to get the flag to him? And she said, how many months? And I said, I think it was 5. I don't remember the details of all the different calling and trying to figure it out. All I remember is that at some point I managed to get a hold of his personal cell number and his address, and I called him and I said, are you home tomorrow? Because tomorrow I'm coming to your house and I am bringing the flag. And he agreed to be home, which is huge. And what I do remember more than anything else is that, do you remember what you said to me in your front yard, Jim? When he came out of his house and he greeted me and I gave him that flag, which had been so neatly folded on my desk for about 5 months. Made me think of you every day. I was kind of sad to give it away, actually. He said, oh, Jacqueline, you don't have to give me this. We love you, Jim. It's so good to see you here, and it's so good to see everyone here. And, so many of the people here help us to tell the story of the men of the Utah. Tomorrow morning in my remarks over at the Visitor Center, I'm going to paraphrase a quote from Franklin Delano Roosevelt's 1943 State of the Union. And I think if you'll forgive the redundancy, I'd like to go ahead and share it with you here tonight, because it's just as applicable as we are here and remembering the men of the Utah. And the quote, to paraphrase, is, as long as our flag flies over the capital of the United States of America, Americans will remember the soldiers, sailors, and Marines who fought the first battles of this war, that being World War II. It was 1943. their unconquerable spirit will live forever. The first battle of that war was 77 years ago tomorrow morning. And 58 men here gave their lives. And every time I'm here, as I was just talking to Jim, every time I'm at the Utah, whether it's walking over on my lunch break because my office is in that building right there, or here with all of you, I also think about all the other souls that are in the water who have, chosen this as their final resting place because of their connection to Pearl Harbor. And their unconquerable spirits will live forever. And it's not just because of the National Park Service and the U.S. Navy, but many of you here, I almost did it again. Mary gave me her new brochure for this year. It's got a lot of information in it. So I just want to thank all of you because the Park Service can't do it alone. We need the help of all Americans to help make sure that these stories stay remembered. And I said I wasn't going to do this, but I think I am going to mention something I'm working on. I always hate to mention a thing I'm working on that's still in the oven and not quite fully baked because then inevitably it gets delayed or something. But one of the things that has bugged me for 3+ years now as a superintendent here is that occasionally we have people who arrive at the visitor center who really want to see the Utah. And sometimes it's even more heartbreaking because they have some sort of family connection to the Utah, but they don't have base access. And so the National Park Service and Pacific Historic Parks over the past year, many of the people that I can see sitting out here have been working toward hopefully eventually doing a small, not anything huge, not like the white boats that go every day to the Arizona, but a small opportunity for a private tour with a ranger so that we can deal with all the base security issues, but to be able to bring people over here maybe once or twice a week on a regular basis. And so keep us in your thoughts as we work to make that happen. I really hope that next year we're able to tell you all about that. So, oh dear, now I've put it out into the universe, and so it must happen. Anyway, thank you all so much for coming back yet again, and I hope you can stick around afterwards and talk some story. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Now it is my special honor to introduce a man who has played a very important role in the life and legacy of the USS Utah. Master Chief Jim Taylor enlisted in the United States Navy in October of 1956 in his hometown of Toledo, Ohio. He served for 32 years as a yeoman in multiple commands. His sea duty assignments include the USS Herbert J. Thomas, USS Higsby, my favorite, the USS Proteus, and the USS Robert E. Perry. Other assignments include U.S. Naval Station Stagney Point, Naval Reserve Training Center Cincinnati, Commander Patrol Wing 2, and his final assignment as the Command Master Chief Patrol Squadron 22 at Barbers Point, where he retired from active service in 1989. He has spent 18 years in civil service as the Assistant Officer in Charge of the Navy Brig right here on Fort Island, and has continued to serve our Navy and our nation for 15 years as a volunteer Pearl Harbor survivor liaison with Commander Navy Region Hawaii. He has taken personal interest and given his own time to take care of our Pearl Harbor survivors in meeting their needs both here locally and the veterans who reside on the mainland. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Master Chief Jim Taylor.
Jacqueline has a habit of making me cry. I'm okay. Let me reverse myself. Jack Fasten, who I'm going to be talking about in a little bit. He's one gentleman that was one sailor that was saved from inside the ship. And he worked for years attempting to get the Utah open to the public. I kind of took up his place after that. And for quite a few years, I've written everybody except God, the president, I should say, and requesting assistance in getting the memorial open to the public. And I haven't had news this good. I can't remember the last time I got news this good, that we're going to finally be able to have the public see this memorial. So, Jackie, thank you so much. It means a lot. Yeah. Sorry, but not as organized as I thought I was. Anybody know what this is? It's a wrench. I'll be talking to you about it in just a minute. I'm going to ditto Jackie. Good morning, good afternoon, good day. Aloha. Thank you all for coming out here to recognize the ship behind me and the people that were serving on it. Just a little bit of history, very small. The ship was about twice as far out as she is now. Everything from that building behind you was water. All of this has been filled in. When the attack took place, that's where they had to swim to evade death inside the ship. It was kind of a tough job because they had to jump off the ship. Some of them had to slide down the ship because it was upside down and got barnacle scratches all over their backs. They had to swim all that distance with Japanese firing at them, strafing aircraft. And these, Gil Meyer will tell you, as soon as they were so happy to get to the shore that's when they cut their feet on the coral. So it was quite a job, quite a feat of just the swim itself. We're honored to have with us Captain Bernard. Thank you so much for coming today. Master Chief, you know how much I love Master Chiefs. Thank you so much for what you're doing here today also. And thanks to everybody else that's here too. I see a lot of covers, Pearl Harbor this, USS Utah that, Pearl Harbor Survivor that. It's really nice to have everybody come out here and recognize this great ship. If there's anybody here from the Afloat Training Group, my special thanks for all the work that you've done on this memorial. The Afloat Training Group is here on Ford Island, and their sailors came out here, scrubbed it, cleaned it, and really did a great job. I want to talk about Bill Hughes. Bill Hughes was a radioman on the ship. He was sound asleep when the first torpedo hit. He didn't know what to do, obviously. They were kind of wondering what's going on. Then the second one hit, and they realized, and when water started coming down in the compartment, they realized they needed to get topside. So Bill was lucky because he was one of the first ones that were to get off the ship. And he dived off the starboard side and was able to get off without getting all the barnacle scratches. But then, of course, they had to swim all the way from way out there and dodge bullets coming from the strafing aircraft. Now, I wouldn't want to be swimming that far anyway, but to be swimming with bullets coming at you, that's kind of scary. And then when they got to shore, guess what? He cut his foot on the coral. He is quoted as saying, "The only injury I got during World War II was when I escaped from the ship." He was born in November of 1921, and he died 6 weeks ago. When the attack started, as I said, he was very lucky because he was one of the first ones off the ship. And so he was able to get off without having to slide down and injure himself. All of his belongings, all he had on was a pair of pants and a T-shirt. And all of his belongings, and the most cherished one of all, a picture of Rita Hayworth, were still inside of his locker. When the war ended, his ship arrived at Tokyo Bay about 2 hours after the surrender signed. I'm proud to say that I know a guy that was on the USS Detroit during the surrender, that man right there, Gil Meyer. So he was here during the beginning of the attack, and he was there at the end of the war, right? That's correct. Okay. When the war ended, everybody was happy. It was probably the most joyous day of the Navy's life and the world's life. Bill also was the gentleman that created the website for the Utah Association, Utah Survivors Association. He was one of those guys, you know, that if there was a new camera out or a new computer thing out or whatever, he had it. He owned it, kind of like Gil. I love you, man. I think that his best Utah ceremony that he ever attended was a couple years ago when he couldn't get on the bridge. He ended up driving over to security or something, and I was worried about him. He wasn't in the audience, and nobody knew where he was, and no phone call or nothing. And all of a sudden, I look off over that way, and I see about 5 vehicles with blue lights flashing, and a car in between them. The car got up there, and the crowd was beginning to disperse, and out comes Bill, escorted by the commanding officer then of the entire base at Pearl Harbor in his dress whites. And Bill said that was a lot better than any kind of a ceremony I ever attended. So he's buried at the Naval National Cemetery in Dallas, Texas. Next, I want to talk about Jack Vasson. Jack Vasson was born in 1916 and he died in February of this year at the age of 101. He was called to active duty in 1941 and was assigned to the Utah. At 07:45, he took over the watch in the electrical room. All of a sudden, the torpedoes hit and the water was starting to come in. He rushed everybody out and kept the electrical system going so people could see in order to escape the ship. He saved many lives by doing that. And he, in turn, was trapped inside the ship. He grabbed a wrench off the bulkhead and a flashlight. And he was finally up next to the hull of the ship, the bottom of the ship, because the ship was then upside down. And he was tapping on the skin of the ship. He then heard some tapping back. He thought, oh, they found me. Well, it turned out that was machine gun bullets that was hitting the bottom of the ship. And so, of course, that was a little bit frustrating. But he continued tapping with this right here that he had taken off the bulkhead. He also still had the flashlight. And to this day, the flashlight still works. And he kept this and his flashlight in his room and basically slept with it all of his life because he credited this and the flashlight for not only saving his life, but saving the ones that ended up getting out because of what he did. For that, he received the Navy Cross, which is the second highest medal there is. Now, I kind of wonder about medals sometimes because if you look at Peter Tomage, he received the Medal of Honor and Jack basically did the same thing, except Jack lived. So, but anyway, the Navy Cross wasn't too bad. The rescue team from the USS Raleigh, which was over there, came over, and between them and some of the crew members of the Utah, they heard the tapping on the deck with this wrench. They cut a hole in the ship and got Jack out. Now, that had to be a really wonderful time to see the sky. After the war was over, he was one of his responsible people for getting this memorial here. And we can thank Jack Fasson and the rest of the people that he worked with, because this memorial is here. He also, at the same time, was trying to figure out a way to get the public to see this memorial. He and a couple of other people tried for years to get that done and failed to do so for various reasons. And you can't blame the Park Service locally here, because they don't have the people. They don't have the money. Okay, I understand that. So I wrote a letter to every congressman, every senator from Hawaii and Utah, and I wrote the Secretary of the Interior a letter, and I got 2 responses, which is typical. And they both said exactly the same thing, and one was a congressman and one was a senator. And almost word for word were the same. And I thought, did they share their responses? I don't know. But bottom line is, I have lobbied, I've talked to people, and the news that I just received, that pretty soon this thing's going to be open. I'm going to volunteer to come out here and give the history to the tourists that are allowed to come over here. You're not allowed to call them tourists, I guess. You got to call them visitors, right? Yeah, well, that's okay. That's okay. It was interesting that during the war, when he was still on the Hainesworth took a kamikaze, which suicide plane, took a hit, and Jack, once again, was saving lives by keeping the electrical system going. Fortunately, he didn't get stuck on the ship when he was doing that. He was buried in Arlington in June. The Navy Honor Guard that took care of Jack's casket at Arlington was the same 2 sailors that were at John McCain's burial, carried his caskets. One of them was with Bush yesterday. I saw him on TV, and I thought, oh my goodness. So I guess they did that because of Jack. That's all I have. I'm a proud American. I'm proud of all these sailors wearing whites. I love it. I love them, and I love my country. And I love everybody, especially in the greatest office that I ever worked in my life, and that's Public Affairs here at Navy Region Hawaii. They're the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your words, Jim. And more importantly, thank you for your commitment to preserving the legacy of the USS Utah. At this time, Chaplain Pittman, Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam, will offer a prayer, followed by the playing of taps by Seaman Dakota Keller.
Let us pray. Our eternal Father, you who alone rules the destinies of nations and who has deemed that men should live in freedom and not fear, please awaken in us a new appreciation of our country through the sacrifices of these men who gave their lives on the Utah so that we may live in freedom. Grant us your spirit as we honor those who have fought the good fight and finished the course. On this day, we call to remembrance those who served here and have laid down their arms to march into that land of eternal peace. We remember their sufferings, remember their fears, the horrors of what they endured. It is time for us to realize that much of the best blood that has been spilt so that we might live free and unchained. Permit us to never forget them, our comrades in arms, for those from whose fallen hands we've taken up the sacred cause of freedom. Today we consecrate unto you the debt of our national gratitude, which is their rightful due. Keep sacred their sacrifice in our hearts. Keep holy our course in your sight, and kindle us with the flame of selfless, unwavering devotion to duty, that we may never be found wanting in those qualities of spirit and mind which are alone to be able to preserve hearth and home, the peace of our nation, and the tranquility of the world. We earnestly implore your providential care as we face the grim and great task which lies ahead. May the day soon come when we can lay down arms and most earnestly give our attention to do justice, to live in kindness, and to walk humbly in your sight. In your name we pray. Amen. And please rise if you are able for playing of taps.
Would the guests please be seated? Before we conclude this afternoon's ceremony, I would like to invite Brian Bonifat, the Hawaii State Chair of the Sons and Daughters of Pearl Harbor Survivors, to come up for a special presentation.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Brian Bonifant, the Hawaii State Chair of Sons and Daughters Pearl Harbor Survivors, and I would like to invite Master Chief Jim Taylor to join me up here at the podium, please. And Jim, I know you like to be the center of attention, so I've cut my comments down from an hour to 30 minutes tonight for you. No, just kidding. In all seriousness, Jim's been doing this for well over 20 years, officiating the USS Utah ceremonies, and if I correct me if I'm wrong, but it was you and a handful of survivors that started it years ago, and it's definitely turned into a lot larger spectacle now, so thank you so much. And thank you for officiating all the ceremonies to our fallen survivors who want to come back here to Pearl Harbor to be scattered in the waters here. So again, it is with our great appreciation that we'd like to recognize you this evening. Kathleen? So on behalf of Sons and Daughters, our national, we'd like to present you with this plaque. In recognition, Jim Taylor, Sons and Daughters Pearl Harbor Survivors would like to recognize Jim Taylor for decades of selfless dedication to honor those casualties and survivors of the attack on Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941. Jim Taylor presided over countless interments, remembrance ceremonies, and placed our Sons and Daughters Pearl Harbor Survivors wreaths at the memorial sites on December 6th and December 7th, and acted as a liaison to Pearl Harbor families. Sons and Daughters Pearl Harbor Survivors will always remember and be grateful for your service and commitment to beloved Pearl Harbor survivors. Thank you, sir. Greatly appreciate it.
Gotcha, Jim.
Yeah. As I do every year, at this time, I'd like to read the names of the sailors that have been placed back inside the ship at their wish after their death, so they could be with their shipmates that died on December 7th, 1941. Robert Boykin, James Oberto, John Jones, James Brady, Robert Johnson, Lee Susi, Carl Johnson, Gordon Sumner, Guy Pierce, Theodore Roosevelt. Yes, it wasn't him. It was the other one. Thomas Molay, Cecil Caliban, Gene Seltzer, David Smith, Harry Smith, and Harry Hofstadt. There's also a couple of the other survivors from the Utah that we placed a keepsake inside the ship because the family wanted to do a casket burial. Again, I thank everybody for what they do for me and what they do for our heroes. You're welcome to come out to the far end of the memorial and scatter some flowers, talk story. Mary Craig would be more than happy to tell you her story. And I thank those people that bought the wreaths. Because of the wind, I didn't bring them up this year. Finally, it took me about 20 years to get smart and realize that the wind would blow them over if we brought them up here. So thank you again. Have a wonderful evening and enjoy tomorrow. Tomorrow's the big day.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our ceremony. Thank you. We would like to invite everyone to grab flower petals from the memorial here. Feel free to take this opportunity to lay them in the water and pay tribute to the crew of the USS Utah.